Our last speakers are Fulgencio Sanmartin from Spain and Luis Faria from Portugal. Luis is working for the company Keep Solutions and was a member of the E-ARK project. Fulgencio is working for the Publications Office of the European Union. Today, Luis will be talking about an open source digital repository designed for preservation called RODA, and Fulgencio will be talking about a case study of the Publications Office of the European Union.
Thank you. So, thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Fulgencio Sanmartin. I work for the Publications Office in Luxembourg, which goes back to 1951, when the first law concerning the coal and steel community by 6 countries in 4 languages was published by a service of publications in Luxembourg. That was in 1951. During more than 50 years, it was a paper-centered business and also location, and it was really centered location because, and also centered on paper, because every official journal was sent every morning at 4 a.m. to every capital city of the EU 15 at the time. So with the expansion in 2004, that became unfeasible. And there were really too many places and too many countries, and the world was changing, of course. So already by 2009, the transformation program, which was a new mandate for the office and for which you can see an extract there, it went all digital centered. So we wanted to move to all digital, following the standards very, very carefully, as much as possible. Some years later, in 2013, the official journal in PDF became legally binding. And that means in 24 languages, the 24 PDFs, which are digitally signed with an XML. So what we have today is not only EURLEX, not only the European law, but also the general publications. And since we needed standards for exposing all that law, especially the metadata, and all linked together and with other laws and so on, we had a look at the standards, at the framework for standards, which was the semantic web. And therefore, we had to go for RDF, linked data, ontologies, you name it. Sparkwell, everything public, everything online. Everything produced automatically in sustainable digital formats, etc. Nowadays, we have the seller behind EURLEX and all the other publications, and the seller has 10 million hits per day. It also has 100,000 documents ingested every day in more than 24 languages, because the general publications are published in up to 100 languages. But the seller was all about linking and publishing, and we also needed another archive, an offline archive, for 2 objectives. One was the long-term preservation, the long-term digital preservation, for which a dissemination archive is not really adapted. And the other was to protect the European Union from litigation. Since all the law was exposed, we wanted to have a copy which was offline in order to protect it from any theft, forgery, whatever. And therefore, we needed an offline archive, and we have 2 of them. And those are the differences, high level. So we wanted, again, to have a look at the possible standards, because there are no magical magical solutions. And we needed a trustworthy archive. And when needing a trustworthy archive, and if you look at the standards, what you find, obviously, is the OIs and the subsequent part, which is the 16363. We already had the formats. We had everything, but the formats are the tiny part of the standards. We wanted, like the semantic web, we wanted a framework of them. And therefore, we had the OIs and the 16363. So we did another thing, which was to create two contracts. One was for the hosting and the service and the software for the OIs, for keeping the data. And we did another contract, which was for auditors to help us on the way to a possible certification in the future. When we sat with the auditors, they found out that the main thing missing was, as in every ISO, documentation. And there are many key points. This is a presentation that I have adapted from a very long one. But the key part is the first point, is the digital preservation plan. You cannot go anywhere. You cannot pass a 16363 without a digital preservation plan. You have to answer, what are you preserving? For whom are you preserving it? When are you preserving it? Until when? How often? Why? You have to answer all that. And you have to get the backup of all your management and senior management. And your mission has to back up that. That was the second slide, the mission at the beginning. So our digital preservation plan is soon to be, I strive to publish it. It is not finished, but it is almost finished. We are doing a round with all EU institutions for comments, so to see what they need to store and so on, and to see if the collections are complete or not. And I would like to publish the digital preservation plan soon, at least the parts that can be published, because not everything could be, of course. Back to the previous slide, concerning the OIs, we made a contract for the hosting, but also for the software. And that is where you can find RODA and Luis, who is responsible for it, and who is going to present it.
Hi, hello. I'm Luis Faria from Keep Solutions, and we are the supporters of the RODA digital repository. This is the website and also the demo, online demo for the RODA, where you can test it online, and you can also see very many instructions how to download it and use it for your own institution. RODA 2.0 is the culmination of several years of work. Much of it was funded by the European research projects, specifically by SCAPE, E-ARK, and also it has some parts that the European Publications Office takes the chance of getting the profit from, the Preforma Vira PDF project that we are also in, and that will be piloted also in the European Publications Office. So it's an open source, long-term digital repository specialized in archives. Version 2.0, so it's already 8 years, more than 8 years old, the repository and the RODA system. And version 2.0 brings a complete overhaul on the system that focuses on performance, and also has a new design, has customizable and multiple descriptive metadata, so you can actually don't have to change your descriptive metadata to fit your information into the archive. You can define how do you view it, how do you validate it, how do you index it, and how you edit it. It uses E-ARK AIP for storage. We have two storage systems. One, which is our preferred one, where we keep everything directly on the file system on the E-ARK AIP format. So you can actually go to the file system and find the format as everyone will expect and can reuse. And also backend with Fedora 4. We also have supported several other zip formats, so we changed the way the ingest works, and we support E-ARK zip, Baggett, ingesting directly files and folders, and the ability to add others, as we will see for this project, what we did and why. We also created a new tool for producers, a desktop tool called RODA in, where producers can create zips from files easily with a few clicks. The main idea here is to create several high-level rules that allows them to create in mass zips to send to the archive. This is not used here on the European Publications Office because they are their own producers, but it is used on other archives we work on, for example, the Portuguese National Archive. And we added many more ingest actions, so possibilities to change and options to change in ingest workflows. We use Apache Solr for index. It's a very highly scalable and adaptable, horizontally scalable indexing system. We also use another platform, Arca.io, for orchestrating all ingest, preservation, and internal actions. So it's very easy for you to select a piece of your archive, depending on what you want to do, and execute a preservation action on it, and get reports and manage it. It automatically, so it has several plugins for format migration, validation, for example, PDFA validation, fixity check, and well, so on. It generates parameters automatically, and you can see it. Thank you. It has risk management tools internally, so you can connect AIPs to risks. It will have soon, next minor version, a specific place for representation information. And it also has the other things that you will expect: statistics, pluggable authentication, and easy deployment using Docker containers. So this is what you get. This is what you get when you download and install RODA, the open source. What we did from the open source to the implementation is that, of course, we installed it. We made branding. So here we added the mission and some of the documentation of the archive itself. On the top menu, you can see the main functions of OIS. So we organized it in this way. I'm not going to show all the repository. I'm just going to show the differences between the base and what is installed. We customized the zip formats and ingest workflows. So as Fulgencio told, that they have, well, of course they have backlog. They have 130 million files and several terabytes of backlog. So we have to ingest that first. And also every day we receive a batch of some hundreds sometimes. It depends, thousands of zips. So they have the little differences in terms of workflow, and so we created differences. We customize the zip format because we keep the zip within the AIP, when we arrived, the zip was already defined. So the way it is exported from the previous system. So we have here two options: or we convert it to E-ARK zip and then ingest it, or we just add a way to directly ingest the zip. And we found that this was a better way because then we will archive what we received from the client, and that will be less prone to errors and information losses. So then you can create so you can easily select the files you want to ingest and ingest them. You can opt in the command to make these automatic. We have this automatic on the system, so you just files just being dropped, fetched from the original from the European Publications Office and then ingested into the system every day. We customized search, so we defined what is the title and how the title is created from the metadata. If you click on, well, you can search here for all fields, but if you click the arrow there, you can see all the advanced fields. There are like a dozen or so of specific fields you can search for. And there are also facets. There are like 10 million AIPs. So if you click here on the left, the big blue button, you can search on 3 levels. You can search on intellectual entities, which is like the top level, the AIP. You can search on representations, and you can search on files. And you can filter through, for example, every PDF, or you can filter for every representation of a type, or you can filter by metadata on the intellectual entity. And when you click it, of course, you go to the specific AIP representation or file. There are around 10 million AIPs, 70 million files, and 40 terabytes. And there are more to come. Okay, So we also customize descriptive metadata, how it looks like, and define ways to validate, index, view, and edit it. We include here control vocabularies like arrowvoc and source type, and you can actually click on each of the blue things there and go to all the AIPs that have that arrowvoc code. You can have embedded file viewers and see details, automatically detect the file format. And you can then select several things to create action. We have remote replication because this system is actually 2 data centers separated by several kilometers in Luxembourg, and there is a replication between one and the other in the master slave for high availability. We also did advanced monitoring so we could improve the system and know when it went wrong. And I'm finished. So if you have any questions, please do. There is here some links for extra information.
So thank you for this. Thank you, Luis. If there are any questions. So before the coffee break, may I ask you the questions? When do you plan to pass the ISO certification?
At the beginning, when we started with UDOR, like 5 years ago, when we published the call for tenders, we thought of perhaps in 2018. Now that we have the auditors looking carefully at what we do, we realize that is not very likely. We are missing the documentation, as I said, it is not yet finished. And we are missing also, we have a lot of metadata. You go to URLEX and you can see that. There is a lot of metadata, but we don't have provenance metadata. And we have 130 million files. So we have to add provenance metadata to all that and to the daily ingestion. So we have to do that, and then we can think of going for certification, hopefully in 2019.
Thank you. If there are any other questions. Yes, Manuela.
You mentioned that you have to add this metadata to this huge number of files. Is there any way to automate this? How do you do that actually? I can help imagine that all the publications office staff manually encodes metadata.
I can even reformulate your question. What happens when a single code, Eurovoc code, changes and it affects 1 million files or 20 million files? Then you have to do it. And you have to ingest it in both archives. And it must disseminate to all data centers and so on. So yeah, that is something that actually happens nearly every day. Not 20 million files, but updates of single metadata of several 100,000 documents. That happens nearly every day. Yeah. And it is all automatized. Yeah. all automatized in a way, because there are other times in which we have to change something which is not very feasible or very easy to do. And there are also another considerations. Whenever you update the metadata, you should document that. And you should, that is yet another provenance. You must document why you are modifying that single metadata for every document. You know, there are a lot of implications, but that is another paper, I guess.
Thank you. So thank you again for Luis and Fulgencio. Thank you to our speakers and all of you for joining this morning session. We have a great challenges and opportunities at the same time, have seen. We can achieve them if you work in Europe together. The E-ARK project was a great example of that, and I am sure that many of our institutions will analyze and use the good results of E-ARK.